You're listening to Bigger Than Belief, real stories about real faith with real people whose belief is unbelievable. I'm your host, Adam Duxter. Thanks for tuning into Bigger Than Belief. Today is Thursday, April 2nd, and for Jews around the world, this week also marks the start of Passover. With that said, I'm excited about the guest we've brought in this week because for some time now, she's literally marketed herself as Minnesota's Jewish friend. She's also a trusted voice in our community with a dedicated audience tuning in to listen to her show on WCCO radio for years now. Jordana Green is also unafraid in her approach. She was an open book during our sit down, which really makes for some of my favorite conversations. In this episode, we talk about her multiple experiences with cancer, losing a parent, and more, and how her faith carried her through it all. So now, here is Jordana Green. Well, we now welcome on a very special guest. She is an award-winning journalist. She's a mom, and she is a lot more than that. She's a very busy woman who's joining us, and I can't say thank you enough. And honestly, too, for our podcast listeners, a little behind the scenes, she's been patiently dealing with us as we figure out a couple of kinks technically here in the podcast booth. It is Jordana Green. Jordana, I think I've said I'm sorry and thank you combined 100 times over the course of the last few minutes. So thank you once more for joining us, and thank you for your patience. The viewers and the listeners won't know, but for your patience for the last few minutes here.
Oh, stop it. It's my pleasure, Adam. Thank you for asking me. And remember, I work in a 100-year-old radio building. So the technology has been there since the earth cooled, and we also have ghosts and gremlins in the system. So I totally get it.
Jordana, your story is one that is super cool to me. When we started this show and said we want to have real people talk about real faith stories, you were one of the first names that came up.
Thank you.
The way that you represent your Jewish faith on a daily basis, both with your radio show and on social media is really cool to see. But for people who aren't familiar with your faith background, your kind of lifelong story of Judaism and the role it's played in your life, what would you tell people? How did you kind of find your faith the way it is now?
I grew up fairly religious. I grew up in New Jersey, fairly religious. We went to synagogue every week, and we were kosher, which is rules of dietary restrictions, what you can eat and what you can't eat. And I was born into that. So that was normal for me. I never thought of it as weird or different until you start going to school and you start realizing that other people are eating cheeseburgers and McDonald's and things like that, and things called lobster that you don't eat. So you feel a little bit different. But, in New Jersey is a bit more of a melting pot. So everybody had their own mishigas and different things. So I never really felt bad about it, except when I had to go to birthday parties with my Hebrew National hot dog wrapped in tinfoil and give it to the mom of the birthday party to put on the grill. So that was weird, but my friends got used to it, and so did I after time. And as a young person, those are things you accept. That's the way your parents do it. This is the house you live in. You have a meat set of dishes and you have a dairy set of dishes. It's just who you are. It's what you do. It was only when I became an adult and went to college and had my own household do you start to question things like, oh, okay, do I want to carry this on into my adult life? Because being Jewish isn't always the easy path. Or being active in your faith isn't always an easy thing to do, but if you feel a connection to it, it is a worthy thing to do. So as an adult is when I think the journey of my faith sort of became questioning. Became, wait, why do we do this? Just because my mom said so? Well, she's not saying so anymore because I'm a grown-up. So do I want to keep the separate dishes? Do I still want to restrict things like cheeseburgers? And you get to make your own decisions as an adult, and then you know your why. And if you don't, you go and research it, and you make an informed decision. So I think, becoming an adult really made me question my faith, which is what Jews are supposed to do. You struggle. You're supposed to, the word Israel means struggle with God. You're always supposed to struggle. You're supposed to question. You're supposed to ask. You're supposed to challenge. And that helped me grow in my faith.
Was that college for you? Was that, first couple of jobs out of college? What was that period of time for you where you say you were going through that process?
I think college is probably the answer. I went to Syracuse, and I'm from New Jersey. It was only a 3-hour drive, but I lived there. And in the dining hall, you have choices. And your mom isn't around. So it was then I decided that, I do feel not just an allegiance, but a reason to want to be kosher and maintain kashrut, even on campus. And it was those little decisions every day, like on Friday night, no, I'm not home and my mom isn't making a Shabbat dinner, but I could go to the Hillel on campus and they have a Shabbat meal for me. So we can say the blessings and make blessings over the wine and the challah and light candles. And finding those little things that I chose to do, even when my parents weren't watching, helped me grow in my faith.
You graduate and you start off in your career. You move away from the East Coast at some point during that. How much harder was it for you when you leave and come to a new region of the country to continue on that trajectory that you were just describing?
It is surprising. I grew up in a diverse area in northern New Jersey. And not everywhere in the country is diverse. I moved to Northeast Pennsylvania. I moved to Indiana. Then I moved to Minnesota. There are places that I encounter people that have never met a Jewish person. So you kind of have to explain what that is if they're interested, if they ask. So was it challenging? Yes, you're not going to find kosher meat in Wilkes-Barre, Scranton, Pennsylvania. You're just not. So you do a lot of vegetarian. you eat a lot of fish, things like that. But you adapt and you make it work. Things that are important to you are not a chore. Well, okay, I'll just speak for myself. Things that are important to me are not a chore in my life. Otherwise, you would purge them from your life. So it wasn't easy, but nor was it onerous because I wanted to do it.
You come to Minnesota. What was, and you talk about these other places, but what was kind of the first reaction when you're looking around and you're looking for community, especially with your faith? What was your reaction coming here?
Holy crap, everybody is white. That was my reaction when I first got here. Everybody was white. That was 24 years ago when I came here in 2001, before 9/11. So I believe we moved here in March of 2001. So I was surprised because I didn't, at the time I came here for work. I was hired at Fox to be the evening news anchor. We did that for about 10 months, and then Rupert Murdoch sold us, and we merged with Channel 9, which was down in Eden Prairie. And I bought a house in Eden Prairie because it was, within 5 miles of my studio, so I could go home and nurse my baby. That's what I wanted to do. I was doing the evening news, and I wanted to be able to go home and nurse. And there's no Jews in Eden Prairie. When we moved there, we were the only 3. And maybe there's the odd one, here and there, but it's not like St. Louis Park. Nobody told me when I moved here, hey, all the Jews are in St. Louis Park. And also, it's fine that they didn't, because I was very happy in Eden Prairie. We don't live in shtetls anymore. It's not like living in a Jewish ghetto. I'm allowed to be out in the world, but I did have to drive to St. Louis Park to buy kosher meat. I did drive to St. Louis Park to send my kids to preschool. At Bethel Synagogue. So then I realized that this is more where the concentration is. This is where the synagogues are located. But I loved Eden Prairie. I have great friends there. And I did not feel other in Eden Prairie.
Was there a point at that point in your career where like, man, I have to get back to the East Coast. I have to get back to where family and community and everyone is? Or did you say, I know I want to stay in Minnesota?
I really liked Minnesota, and it was shocking that I liked Minnesota. When I was living in Indianapolis, my agent in New York called me, and he says, hey, Jor, how about an opportunity in Minnesota? I said, wait, hold on, Ezra. Let me go look at a map. And then I looked at Minnesota. I said, Ezra, there is no way I'm moving there. It's like Canada. And he goes, no, trust me. My agent had worked in this market for KSTP when he was a young reporter before he became an agent. And he's like, you're going to love it. It's a great community. There are really smart people there. And all of the things he said about Minnesota are true. I've been here 24 years because I've chosen to be here for 24 years. It is a great place to raise your kids. It is clean and lovely, and people are way more diverse than my first impression. And people are kind. And eventually people become welcoming. A lot of people are very... And people have heard this about Minnesota. They're not all that generous to strangers or outsiders. They don't really let you in their secret circles or their bubbles, but eventually you can work your way in.
And to that point, I've moved places a few times in my career, and I know that as a Christian, one of the biggest things is like, okay, I have to find like a community, and for me, it's like a faith community. There are a lot of churches here. I know you talked about, there maybe being scarcity depending on where you're looking of like a Jewish community. What was that process like for you to find, not just a community of people or friends and people that you work with or do life with, but to find a faith community here?
It's interesting because I started at one synagogue and it wasn't the right fit. And I'd never had that experience before because all my life I had belonged to one synagogue in New Jersey, my temple of origin. And when I came here, I joined another one in the same conservative Orthodox vein that I was in, which is not too religious, not too secular. Conservative is the middle of Judaism, where you can still drive on Shabbat, but you still have Shabbat dinner, and you are kosher, but you can bend the rules a little bit. And it wasn't the right fit for me. And what I found the right fit for me was a more religious experience. My husband then was growing in his religiosity and doing more Torah study. And we both sort of took that leap together. And now we belong to two Orthodox synagogues. And it is the right fit for us.
At this point in your life, if someone were to ask you just what faith means to you, how would you answer that?
Community, it's family, it's tradition, it's regimentation, it's a rule of morals and ethics that can help guide you, that I do look to my religion for support. I do look to my religion for what's right and wrong. We debate ethical questions in my Torah class all the time. And debating ethical questions helps you then in your real life apply what you learn in real life. So I find, and that's through Torah study more recently, my religion for me has become so relevant in my everyday life when moral clarity has really become a challenge for so many in the world. And truth is often obscured, or truth is being gaslit or being twisted into certain kind of narratives. I think having a faith, holding true to morals, understanding good versus evil, understanding that evil exists in the world, and sometimes there is a right side and sometimes there is a wrong thing to do. I think religion can help you weed through that.
It's one thing to be a faith outsider when it's just you going through your day-to-day life, but like you are a public figure.
Yep.
People see aspects and elements of your life, and at the same time, your faith is on full display. How hard can that be to be someone who is of a minority faith group here in the Twin Cities, but also be such a public figure where people hear you and they see you and they know you at the same time?
People say the craziest things, Adam. Like, you would be shocked at the things people text me on, like, we have a text line at WCCO Radio. I'm on from 9 to noon, and I do talk about my faith, and I use a lot of Yiddish on the air. I talk about, I'm just me. I don't know how to be anything else, so that's what you get on the radio. But I remember once saying on the radio, as a Jew, I feel this way, or whatever it was. I was giving a perspective on something. And somebody texted in and they said, Jordana, you just called yourself a Jew on the air. Isn't that a slur? And I was like, wow. And she was being completely sincere. She thought that the word Jew was a slur. And comments like that, I don't get mad. I never get offended, because that's just a useless emotion. So I don't get offended. I understand that questions come from lack of knowledge. And I said, thank you for asking, but absolutely not. I am a proud Jew, and I refer to myself as a Jew, and it is absolutely not a slur. And I'm sorry that you think of it or have heard it that way. But that would be like a Christian person saying, I'm a Christian, and thinking that was negative. And it's not, of course. So I said, please, whatever your faith is, think of yourself that way. That's how I feel saying, I'm a Jew. I'm a proud Jew. Being a Jew is not a slur, no matter what a lot of people in the world would tell you right now. it is, that's how we define ourselves. We are Jews. We always have been for thousands and thousands of years. I am a proud Jew standing here today, being able to practice because we have survived thousands of years.
How have the last few years been?
Awful. They've been awful, Adam. They've been terrible. I mean, don't you think they've been terrible? They've been terrible for a lot of faiths, but for Jews, it's been awful. Since October 3rd of 2023, when Hamas invaded Israel and murdered 1,200 people and mass rape and torture and took 250 innocent people into the tunnels of Gaza as hostages, it's been absolutely devastating. And the attack on Jews worldwide because of what has happened and because of the chants of globalize the Intifada, which most of people don't even know what that means when they chant it, have come to American soil. There was just an attack on a synagogue last week, a shooting or ramming into a synagogue, a person armed with explosive and guns. Jews have been shot in the street in Washington. And for people to say that those are reactions to the Israeli response to the Hamas attack is bull. What that is anti-Semitism straight up. You don't attack Jews on American soil because of what a foreign government is doing unless you're an anti-Semite. So how has it been for the last few years? It's been really bad.
How has it been personally for you? I mean, we did talk. You are a public figure. People have access to say things to you.
They do.
Or to talk to you directly. I mean, how has the last 3 years been personally?
Terrible.
Yeah.
They call me Genocide Jordana. People text in, okay, Genocide Jordana. We have politicians saying that any Zionist believes in genocide. It's been awful. That's not true. I am a proud Zionist. A Zionist means you believe that Israel has a right to exist. That's what it means. The fact that the word has been perverted and the word has been just gaslit and mangled and twisted into a slur is devastating. So they come at me on the text line. I post my Shabbat every Friday on my Instagram. I light the candles. I bless my children. We make a blessing over the wine and the challah. My husband gives a little lesson in Torah, just a positive moral lesson. And people will post on my Instagram, kill the Jews. Oh, your daughter looks rapeable. Like, they'll put that on my Instagram. That's how awful people are when I am sharing a beautiful ceremony. We're not talking about Israel. We're just lighting candles, and I'm giving a blessing to my children. And they will post, we know where you live. We're coming to kill you. It's been awful, Adam.
How does that change the day-to-day just walking around? I can't even imagine.
Well, I can't let them win. It can't change anything for me. I am who I am. I'm still a proud Jew on the air. I still post my Instagram. You can't let them win. There is truth in the world, and they are not the truth. So I keep doing my thing. I mean, it doesn't really change much for me.
How much of it do you think comes down to, you talked just a moment ago, someone who thought saying that you were a Jew, would be a slur. But in this point in 2026, I mean, how much do you think we still don't understand each other or our different faiths? And how much do you think there is a lack of understanding about what a Jewish person is or what they believe? Or does that make any sense? Because you still make a point to say, I want to be your Jewish friend.
That's my Twitter, or Twitter X, whatever you call it, and Instagram. It says, I'm Minnesota's Jewish friend. Now you can say you have one.
Yes.
Because there are people who listen to my show who've never known a Jewish person, who've never seen a Jewish person, who've never talked with one. So I didn't realize that when I took a job here in Minnesota, I might be appointed as sort of Minnesota's Jewish friend. And there are other Jewish people that are public figures around Minnesota. There certainly are. I'm not the only one. But I'm happy to be that person. I am happy to be your entree into the fact that Jews don't have horns or hairy knuckles. There is no big cabal. We don't control the weather. We don't have space lasers. I'm just a regular person raising kids like you, and that's who Jews are.
I mean, even from the time where we talked about being different as a kid to now being, a target in these ways.
Yep.
I mean, what keeps you coming back to your faith. For many people, if there was something in their life that was causing them distress or, was making them, feel othered, it could be really enticing to want to leave that thing or walk away from that thing. What keeps you from doing that?
Because it doesn't cause me distress. It gives me hope. It gives me solace. It gives me a place that I know I can feel and be in the truth and be on the right side of history. It feels like I am living what my ancestors fought so hard for. Jews have been here for 3,500 years, and we have survived the Romans. We survived the Greeks. We survived the Assyrians and the Babylonians and the Nazis and Haman and Hamas and the Iranian regime now. We will keep surviving. I'm just doing what my people have been doing for 3,500 years. And we have lived, so I continue to live. I think being a Jew today is not only a miracle that we're still here, that the Nazis didn't win, but a gift that I am here and I am my ancestors' greatest blessing to continue to live my faith, to continue to be the light of Judaism, to show goodness in the world and kindness in the world and education and acceptance and be the person that I have been taught and learned to be.
Aside from the last few years, I mean, your faith has carried you through some really big challenges for people. I mean, you're very open and public about it, but you've had cancer.
Yes, twice.
Twice. When that happens, I mean, I've talked to people through this show that have experienced a lot of difficult situations, but they talk about how their faith gets them through. Yeah. Was there a moment for you as you're going through cancer where you're leaning on your faith? And if so, what did that look like?
When I had cancer, it was COVID. And at some point, I was at the Mayo Clinic getting treatment. I had 8 rounds of chemo, and then when it came back, I had a bone marrow transplant. During one of my 8 rounds, in which you're hospitalized for about a month to 6 weeks each time, the nurse came in and told me that because of COVID, there are no visitors allowed. And I was only allowed to have one visitor, and my husband came. And she came one day, and I was in the haze of chemotherapy, and she said, Jordana, I'm sorry to say, but the hospital is closed to visitors. You can't have any visitors. And I said, except for Mark, right? I understand it's just Mark now. And she said, no, Jordana, there are no visitors allowed anymore. And when you're on the bone marrow transplant unit and the leukemia unit, we're very sick. We can't even have plants. So you shouldn't be exposed, but we were at least allowed the one visitor. And when the one visitor was taken from me, my husband, my lifeline to the outside world, it was just me and God. That's it. And there was a lot of time for reflection and meditation and aloneness. And I like being alone, but this was loneliness. This was a very hard time. And you're also ill. And it was a very low point in my life, as you can imagine. I was very sick, and I was in a lot of pain. And you have to have a lot of different treatments at the time, like lower spine punctures and things like that are very uncomfortable. And there's also this fear that you're probably going to die, because I was quite sick. A lot of time for self-reflection and a lot of time for prayer, and it does change you. And I'm not saying if I was allowed to have visitors, I wouldn't have been changed. But when it's just you and God and you're on the bathroom floor because you can't get up and the nurse isn't coming, or you can't think straight, or you lean on your faith in a way that is moment to moment to get through the day that you haven't had to before. And even if that faith is, I really hope you exist, God, because I'm going to keep praying to just get me through the day, that was enough for me. I don't have the answers about God and what happens when you die. I don't have any answers like that. I just know the things my faith teaches me to believe and to keep going and to pray.
How much did you think about death during that time?
Tons. And I've talked about this on the air on my show. I was certain when I was diagnosed the second time that I was going to die. The first time I thought I was going to make it. Oh, this leukemia, I got this. I'll be fine. I can do this. I'm young and healthy. I was 48 when I got diagnosed. I can do this. But when it recurred, that threw me. Then I thought, because it recurred 16 months after my treatment ended, it came back fast. And I did have an aggressive form of leukemia. I thought, this is it. Now I'm going to die. And, you know, I went back for treatment, of course. It was bone marrow transplant at that point, which eventually did save my life. But I was so convinced that I was going to die, I made videos. I made videos for all my kids. I made videos for my husband, made videos for my parents, and videos for, here's for when you turn 18, here's for your wedding day, here's for when you have your first child, here's for when, you know, your kid graduates, because I knew I wasn't going to be able to live to see that. Those videos were very hard to make, but also I wanted to, if cancer was going to rob me of being able to spend my life with my family, I at least wanted them to remember me in a fun or lighthearted or an advice-giving mom kind of way to keep taking care of them. And I just prayed. I prayed, and I would pray with them in the videos that I knew that they were going to be okay. And my faith kind of helped me along. You know, lean on God, lean on your faith, lean on your community. Judaism is all about community. It's all about the people that we surround ourselves with. And in that space of not only thinking I was going to die, that wasn't public at the time, but being so sick, the way my community rallied around me was such a renewal and invigoration of my Judaism. And this happens in many faiths where you're sick, people create, you know, the hot dish train or who's going to bring a meal. Well, my goodness, I had people bringing me kosher food. I had people cooking for my kids and stopping by. It was just an extraordinary display of support and knowing that was all I had left, just faith that I was somehow going to come through this. And it gave me solace. I'm not going to say that faith cured me. I'm not going to say it was a miracle. What I am going to say is it helped me through the hard days.
It sounds like it simultaneously challenged and grew your faith at the same time.
I was never mad. People ask that, are you mad at God? I'm not mad at God. God did not give me leukemia. I don't believe that. If he did, he can let me know, or she can let me know when I get there, when I get up there, and why. But I don't believe that to be true. I don't believe that bad things happen as a punishment to people. It's something that happened. And I also don't believe that faith saved me. I believe that prayer soothed me while I was struggling, and the prayer of others buoyed me in my fight with medication against something that was trying to kill me.
I heard you say something a moment ago about not knowing essentially what's next or what comes next. We interviewed about a month ago with someone who's a Christian but has a degenerative disease that will kill him. And he talked about, you know, as a Christian, just kind of the promise of heaven and knowing,
yes.
you know, where were you with that? Was it, hey, I die and I don't know what's going to happen next, or I don't know where I'm going to go or what that's going to be like? Where were you with that process?
You know, in Judaism, we believe in, regeneration of the soul, healing of the soul. It goes back to source. You maybe come back on a higher level or a lower level, depending on what happened. It's sort of karmic. But remember, we don't know because no one's ever come back to tell us what happens after you die. But these are Kabbalistic viewpoints and like high-level Judaism viewpoints that you return to God and then, you work on your soul to repair your soul to be the best version of yourself. And you might need multiple lifetimes to do that, multiple opportunities to elevate the soul. So I don't know that they gave me comfort. It gave me the fact that I'm going to do the best I can with what I got every day. I didn't make promises like, if I live through this, I'm going to change this. If I live through, it was more just, I'm just going to do the best I can to live and then to do well if I do live with the time I have left.
You've talked so much already in this interview and just in the hour or so that we've been together about your parents. Your mom passed.
She did, very recently.
When you have something like that happen, I mean, what role has your faith played, or just how have things been?
Thank you for asking. My mother, Pam Green, may she rest in peace. She passed December 30th of this past year, and she was sick, and she was in hospice at the very end. But it all happened in about a month, so it was fairly quick considering like hospice terms and end of life for cancer. She was ready to go because she was in a lot of pain and she had been fighting for about 4 years. So that, I think, is a little bit easier than a tragic death or, God forbid, an accident or something like that. But the thing about death and Judaism, what happens is we bury them right away, the next day or the day after, and then we begin the Shiva. The Shiva is 7 days of mourning. And what happens is the Shiva family, the mourners, stay home and people come and visit. And of course, being Jewish, they bring food. There's always a lot of food. And for 7 days, you say Kaddish, you say a prayer for the dead, a very short service, prayers in Hebrew, and people come to visit and you talk about the person that you've lost and you share stories. And the 7 days of Shiva were so healing and meaningful, and my family and my dad and my siblings and I and my cousins and my aunt felt so supported by our community that I thought I was so grateful for my Judaism because it taught you how to grieve. It gave you a roadmap to grief, whereas so many people don't have one, and they feel so lost after somebody meaningful in their life leaves them. Well, in Judaism, there's a way to do it. There's a way. This is what you do. You bury the person. You have a funeral service, you bury the person, then you do this grieving process for 7 days. And it continues for a whole year for the family with other things. But those 7 days were powerful and healing. And after the 7th day, the immediate family goes on a walk. They physically go on a walk around the block. This symbolizes they walk around the block to make it like a circle, because the circle is a renewal of life. It means that, there's no beginning and the end. It renews, and also to signal to the community that the family is re-entering society, that the formal grieving process is over. So we felt as a family that it was okay to move on. We didn't have to carry this grief every day. We didn't have to be miserable every day. We cried so many tears. And then Judaism gave us a place to say, it's okay if you stop now and if you go back to work. And if you resume other daily activities and childcare and cooking for your family and doing the things. And I was so grateful for the roadmap to grief that Judaism offered my whole family. I'm the most religious one out of my siblings and my dad. And I was so grateful.
Carried you through or helped you through, like you said, it gave you kind of a step-by-step almost.
An instruction manual on how to grieve. And you know what? It really worked for us.
I can't imagine. Luckily, both my parents are still here, but I do know for so many people that is just a process of what do you do or how do you walk through that? We talked about, and I don't want to keep coming back to this, but just people watching the news and they're watching what's happening in our world and they're trying to make sense of who's right, who's wrong, who started this, who's amplifying this. You've worked in the news for a long time. You're still very news adjacent. What do you want people to know when they're watching all of the conflict in our world? And it feels like faith is one way or another for many different people playing some sort of role in it. I mean, what would you want people to hear from you, a Jewish woman so proudly here in the Twin Cities, just about how they should process information if they don't know where to start?
It's a hard question because as a Jewish person and a Zionist and somebody who supports Israel and Israel's right to exist, it's been a real challenge because I have watched fellow media twist and write headlines that are bordering on untruthfulness because now it's cool to hate Jews. Now being anti-Zionist is the thing that everybody's doing because they don't really understand what Zionism is. People do not have a grasp on this conflict. This is an ancient conflict of peoples. People also don't have a grasp on the, ancient Israel, Judea and Samaria, and the lands and the policies of Israel and the policies of the surrounding nations. And to jump into this conflict as somebody who just read something on TikTok and then make a snap judgment about Zionists is so painful to me, because as Jews, we grow up learning about this. You know, modern day Israel was founded in 1948. That is within my parents' lifetime. And that's fairly new. I come from a legacy of Holocaust survivors. So I understand how important and meaningful the new post-Balfour Declaration creation of the modern-day Israel. But I also understand that shekels and Hebrew and Jewish literature has been found in Israel and Judea, Samaria, whatever you want to call it, where we call modern-day Israel, for thousands and thousands of years. So I would urge people, if they are really interested, and it's not just like a buzz thing or what the cool kids are doing now, if they're interested in history of the conflict, to really dig deep and to educate themselves before they make snap judgments and before they take a stand, to really know what they're standing for. It breaks my heart to see people standing up for the Iranian regime that repressed so many people only for the reason that it's against Israel. They are not understanding this conflict about why the Iranian regime has to go down and how deadly and damaging they are. And if anybody who calls themselves a human rights advocate or somebody who believes in women's rights or freedom and equality thinks that the Iranian regime should have remained in place, they really need to do more research about that. So I would urge people to educate themselves and not make snap judgments and not judge other people just because they're Jewish, or don't believe lawmakers who say Jewish people believe in genocide, because we don't. We don't. The term genocide was coined after the Holocaust, a true genocide. And it is upsetting when people twist and gaslight, especially when they are ignorant of the true seriousness of the situation.
How much of our problems are just not knowing each other or understanding each other?
It's a lot. I would say that's a lot of it. I would say that headlines and media and social media has played a terrible role in making things confusing for people. There is an active campaign to confuse facts, and that is heartbreaking for me as a former journalist and as a person who spends her day on my talk show trying to make sense of the world, trying to figure out those issues. The fact that I find a lot of media is twisting, and social media makes things harder for people who really maybe would have an open mind about things. Just seeing certain headlines confuses them. And I feel like people who are unfamiliar with this intimately, with this conflict, they don't have a chance at getting at the truth, because there's so many opinions and fake news and just negativity clouding the facts.
Last thing I want to ask you about is this episode will air coinciding with Passover.
Pesach. Mm-hmm.
What does that mean for you? Just when someone says, "Hey, it is Passover," what does that mean for you?
I mean, this is a perfect example. This is a holiday, the Exodus from Egypt, that we have been celebrating for thousands of years. And what was the Exodus of Egypt? When we were led by Moses into the land of Israel. And Moses didn't get to go because he hit the rock. There's a whole story there. But it's hard to deny the indigeneity of Jews that fled from being slaves in in Egypt and Mitzrayim into Israel. So what do? I laugh, because I think if everybody just knew the history, they would know that, Jews are native to Israel. That's the homeland of where Judaism grew, but that's a sidebar. But what Passover is freedom from slavery. And in modern days, we were not making bricks for the Pharaoh. That's not the slavery that we're in. So I can leave you with this thought that modern day Passover is freedom for whatever enslaves you. Is it your phone? Is it competition with your friends at school? Is it wanting a newer car? Is it the pursuit of money? Is it wanting to, be so popular? What is it that is enslaving you in your own mind? What is keeping you in captivity? Is it your phone that you're glued to? Whatever it is, try to free yourself from that. That is a way to take the ancient holiday of Passover and make it a universal, but a life lesson for today. And something I love about my religion and about Judaism is that we have ancient struggles that are still relevant today. And you learn those through Torah study. You learn the rabbis can help you and the Rebbitzins can help you sort of make it relevant. And that's it. We're not building bricks. We don't have mortar. We don't have, we celebrate with the bitter herbs and the salt water and the tears of the Jews. Those are our religious symbols during Passover. But if we really think about what is enslaving us today, we should wish for freedom from whatever we feel is holding us back. And that is the story of Passover.
You've been so generous with your time. Quickly, how can people get connected with you, see your stuff, find you? A second to just plug yourself.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yes,
Thank you very much.
Yes.
My Instagram is where you can see all the Shabbat videos. That's at Jordana Verde, green, Jordana Verde. And, of course, you can listen to me on WCCO Radio with Adam Carter, my partner, from 9 to noon, Monday through Friday.
Awesome. Jordana, you've been so gracious with us. Thank you for your time. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Adam, and thank you for your podcast. It is greatly appreciated.
Thank you so much for taking time to listen to Bigger Than Belief. If you're new here, we do this every single week. Real stories about real faith and real people. If you enjoyed this conversation, please take a moment to rate this podcast 5 stars wherever you're listening to us. Seriously, it does make a difference. And if you've been a listener for a while, please drop us a review. Also, that helps us be seen by even more people than you would realize. We'll be back next Thursday with another brand new episode. In the meantime, folks, be well, and we'll see you then.
Love podcasts? Love Minnesota?
Check out the WCCO podcast studio lineup.
Hear the top stories of the day with 4 things to know.
Discover top female athletes and teams from around the state on women in sports.
Dive into stories about faith and belief, from your local leaders to your neighbors next door, with Bigger Than Belief.
Stay in the know on the go with the WCCO podcast studio. Go to WCCO.com/podcasts.